Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Navarro. I use she, her pronouns. Welcome to Spinning the Yarn, the crafty TTRPG interview show. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of breath. One second. Here at Euphoria, for all things Euphoria, look for our socials linked down below. This season of Spinning the Yarn is sponsored by Brambleheart Games, the creators of Fey Earth. Their crowdfunding Hidden Folk of the Feywild. Sorry, hang on. A new bestiary for D&D 5e featuring obscure fae and magical creatures based on European folklore. Each creature has a unique stat block, spells, and a description of the real lore that inspired it. Check out the crowdfunder at the link below. Like I said, I'm Taylor Navarro. I will be your host for today at Spinning the Yarn. What is spinning the yarn? That's a very good question. I don't think I've ever given a consistent answer to. Spinning the yarn is a phrase that we use when we're telling stories with friends. Does that seem familiar, TTRPG nerds? Yes, yes, it does, because that's what we're going to be doing. But before I introduce my wonderful guest, a little bit about the yarn that I am wearing today. I'm sorry, everyone. I was in a rush, so we have a repeat of this wonderful eyeball cardigan that I made for myself some years ago. And today I'm crocheting. It doesn't look like anything. It's going to be a hat with cat ears. Um, but you must be thinking, Taylor, why are you so out of sorts? Well, the thing is, I just got back from the US. I don't know if you know this. I've stolen one of your own. I have kidnapped someone, and I am ready to reveal who I have kidnapped now. So I'd like to introduce my guest for today. Ta-da! Would
Yeah,
you like to introduce yourself, RahRah?
I'd love to. It's great to be back in the UK. Thanks for accepting my asylum paperwork. I'm RahRah. I go by they, he pronouns, and I'm the creator of the Heart is a Dungeon podcast, and I'm a good friend of Taylor Navarro.
Yes, you are. I got you here on Spinning the Yarn. We moved you to Europe specifically for this. We will send you back at the end. I apologize.
Oh, no.
um, okay, Rara. I have to ask the same thing at the start of every time because we all know art is exactly the same and we never iterate on it and we never change it. We just use the same rules every time.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm. Thomas
so
Kincaid or bust.
exactly. So, what are what is like your crafty thing? What are you crafting with? Have made? What's going on?
I've been cursed like my whole life with being the writer friend with all the visual artist friends. So all my friends could paint and take photos, and I was mostly just a word guy. But at one point, maybe like a decade back or so, I started making dioramas. I had a whole the Lost Sad Wizard campaign, which was a little claymation wizard who I kept just making different scenes of him. So I've always liked fiddling, and I have I sometimes I make little terrains. These are small
Ooh,
ones. This one locks into 4 others, so it can be like an earthquake battle map, um,
that's so
and
cool.
like bricks and stuff. We used to run a whole bunch of home games before I started the podcast because we ran a like queer D&D player in our region meetup so players could find safe tables. And then we would find people that were like, hey, we don't know how to play. So they'd come to our house and we'd have like a 3-part campaign on this is how you play D&D. And then we'd send them out into the world. So that was back
Wow.
before the podcast. So I probably have like 60 terrains like stacked up over here, some of them larger than like a pizza type of size.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. We've not had anyone who's done terrain or dioramas yet. I think I've had one mini painter. So this is something cool and unique. So thank you for bringing these vibes over
Yeah.
here.
I've got some
Um,
little things to fiddle with while we're chatting. Yeah.
oh, very nice. So what came first for you? Like, was it dioramas or was it TTRPGs first then?
Dioramas with some oomph, but TTRPGs make early appearances in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start playing them till a bit later, but like in junior high, I played Magic for the first time. Like I beat all the old Zelda games with my older brother, like the original Nintendo ones. Like we had a home drawn map on the wall, and we would like play it together, type of deal. And then later, I ran into like Heroes Quest and like some old like RPGs on a board, but I didn't really know what they were. I grew up like Pentecostal minister parents. So Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s during the Satanic Panic was not a very well approved of thing
Mm.
in those households. You could read all the Lord of the Rings you wanted, but if you brought in other fantasy, it became like evil.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Where did they stand on the Chronicles of Narnia?
I don't know if they had read it, but they loved us reading them. Because there's an old 80s cartoon of Lion Witch in the Wardrobe that is one of the few VHS we had growing up, and I would watch it
Mm.
over and over and over. Speaking of C.S. Lewis, speaking of Clive Stevens Lewis,
Is that his first name?
mhm,
I
his
didn't know
his
that.
dad was like a diplomat or like a speechwriter, so he was like a poor little chubby kid with a huge vocabulary. So people always picked on him a little bit.
Oh.
But in his autobiography, Surprised by Joy, he lists 3 things that were moments that kinda made him think the soul existed, like it was just kind of his path through his life. The first
Mhm.
one was as a little kid seeing a diorama that his brother had made, and the like fake little bushes and the trees and the grass and the water filled him with such a sense of wonder that that was when he pinpointed thinking there was more to being human than just being alive. um, and I've always really loved that story when it comes to just art in general.
Mhm.
Showing people other worlds can make them think about their own in a different way.
You're so right. My brain is moving so fast. I have to try and catch the thought before it leaves me because that is so true, and we see it a lot with TTRPGs, specifically with a lot of like indie TTRPGs, and the way that they are designed in a way to make you focus on like this one element of life that maybe you're not familiar with, or maybe like I've done it. Like a lot of my games are about parenthood because I know that's an experience lots of people don't have.
Hmm.
And I give it freely to make you understand more about life beyond the own lived experiences that you've had, or if you have had those experiences, to understand a different perspective or be seen. You
Ma,
know?
a character I saw you play recently, who was a parent, was actually incredibly insightful for such a short episode on just like the joyful burdens of being a parent, and not
Mhm.
everything just being rose glasses, like, "Oh, this is what I was made for," but these are also, like, crystal clear decisions that impact the rest of your existence, and I think those things should come with pros and cons that people can be honest about,
Mhm.
because it's a shared struggle for so many, and I think you're one of the best at that. Um
Thank you. That's very kind. You're not allowed to flatter me. This is my show and I don't accept compliments.
Oh, heck. Um, Taylor, you suck at being a perfect parabolist about a topic I'll never experience.
Thank you. That's exactly But no, that's great. See, this is why this talk show exists, because there's like with art and the concept of like shared experiences and everything that art is and does. Um TTRPGs are doing that. And I think we almost have an obligation to do that as actual play performers, as game designers. Um you know, to share our experiences with the world and get people to start understanding different perspectives. What do you think?
Yes. I would also add the asterisk of understanding themselves. I did
Yes.
a panel at PAX that was like, why do we tell sad stories? So, like, kind of the reasoning and the safety tools behind it. And one of my returning points was we have a moral responsibility to become more mature than the adults that came before us emotionally. Many of us, especially me, Catholic parent, minister parents, like emotions are swept under the rug. Sometimes you just don't talk about them for the rest of your life, especially things with family. And I think
Hmm.
there's so much generational heartbreak that just has never been brought to light that people haven't learned how to love in the healthiest ways. So I think I'm very intentional with how I tell stories, even though I like to play it off that I'm just kind of like, a high goof who's going about their day. I think one of the best things you can do as an artistic activist is try to get people to understand themselves better. Uh,
Hmm.
It's why we don't really have villains in my show because when it comes down to it, we're usually the villain of our own story.
I mean, yeah, I can absolutely see that. But I think one of the wonderful things that I've seen in like your work is that like when it comes to understanding others, understanding yourselves, um while there are a lot of sad vibes, it doesn't have to all be sad. Like the idea of like art doesn't just have to be pain, it can be joyful moments. But also this like the kind of like art and games where this is a little bit silly and it just exists because the thought exists. Like that like it is here because it is here and for absolutely no other reason. Like there has to I'm sure I will attach a question to this eventually. You just get my raw unfiltered thoughts. Everyone does. This happens a lot.
That's why I
Um
come to this country, to be honest. It's not just for the chips.
But no, what like okay, let me go back to my questions. Let's get this thing back on the rails. Um, so I know that you don't craft in like the kind of physical sense outside of dioramas and terrain making. Have you like so if you're not crafting while you're playing TTRPGs, do you do anything like with your hands? Like do you like create whilst you're playing? What is your process? What do you do?
I usually GM, so there's usually not a lot of, like, I'm waiting for other people's turns to end type of
Mm,
time. I usually wave around one of these weird flowers, but that's just because 'cause I'm autistic, and I like to, cheer for everyone, like a little flower punk, cheerleader. So I've never done that. When we had all the home games, it was usually me looking at what I had crafted. And some of these terrain battles were like the entire table we had wide. Like I'd spent months on like one fight that was coming. So it was more appreciating my craft while I was playing because it gave me a tool. Um,
yeah.
but usually I'm pretty locked in when I'm GMing because of the type of games I run. It's
Mhm.
just me looking for emotional cues everywhere versus mechanics that will come into play more so. Most of my GMing is an inner thing versus an outer thing.
I love that. How does it we're gonna get deep, sorry, chat,
Let's
or
do
about
it.
to she's going on a philosophical one again. I do this
Sorry,
from time
chat.
to time. Um, how does it make you feel knowing that the thing that you have created is being used to inspire play and emotion? Because like when I think about it, like I made a scarf for my husband and I'm going to be so excited when I give it to him because I know it's going to keep him warm, like it has that practicality like of play, and also it's going to bring him joy because I spent time into making something that he likes. So
Mhm.
is it like a similar experience, would you say?
In a way, but it's also like a show for one. Uh,
Mm,
before TTRPGs, like my spouse creature and I, we ran like a poetry publishing company. Before then, I self-zine poetry that I would pass out on streets since I was like 12 or 13. So I've always known that I was the biggest fan of what I was giving people. Because I've never been bashful about my art. I love what I make. I have a crush on all my hands touch because no one else will ever know me better than me. Like, this is the one chance to be truly known. So I believe in what I make and I love what I make, and I'm autistic, so it helps. So when I'm 13, I'm just out on street corners, like handing these things out, and they're like, "What is it?" I'm like, "It's my poetry." And I'd go into bookstores and try to trade them for books because in my head, poetry from a 13-year-old is just as important as this Marguerite Draw book you're trying to sell for $13. And I just believed that art would open doors because of how important it was inherent. I found out later that wasn't true. But my ability to believe in what I make has never gone away. Some of the attention Heart of Dungeon's gotten has very surprised me because my art has always been a little too weird for masses and always a little too weird for judges. Um,
mm,
so when we get into these web fests with very prominent, like amazing creators who, without any shade, are doing things a little less weird than we are,
mhm.
it's a legitimate surprise. I know a lot of creators like to be like, "Oh, I can't believe we got into this," and like, well, everyone else can. You like have the biggest players in the world at your table. For me, I'm always a little shocked uh, because it's just never been received that way. So it feels really nice to have a home in TTRPGs where there are some folks that love the language I use. Because for so long it's been a this is what I do. I don't care if you don't like it. Like it's great. It sucks that you can't get it. That was my my attitude when I was like in my early 20s and things like that. And then later I learned that it's not about changing your art for a consumer. It's about staying so pure that other people who have gone through the same story might see themselves in what you're making. Um, but I'm in a different camp where I'm not trying to like get a career out of it. I am a
Mm.
hobbyist. I am just this is a love project for me. And I understand that those are very two different modes of operation with no shade being thrown either way.
Yeah, no, there are differences. It's just like when you really love, like, again, crochet because it's in my hands, the first thing I can think of,
I
and then
can
you
crochet,
decide,
by the way, but it's real clumsy and bad.
I had to learn to do it 3 separate times. I don't blame you at all.
Farrell crocheted me this lard
That's
because
amazing!
Adventure Time has a bunch of different things like this that are called lards, and this is a space lard.
Oh, wow, that's so good. Wait, hang on, where was I? Oh, yes, the difference between industry pros and hobbyists. It's like when you like, because I did this, I was really big into knitting, and then I started trying to sell it.
Mhm, mhm.
And like just the attitude that you go in with, like the things that you're willing to make versus the things that you aren't, like weighing up how much of yourself you can really put into something if you're only charging like $10 for it, like that underselling yourself and all of that stuff. Like it's all right that it maybe it's just human behavior. It's human behavior, it's art, it's all of these things are all one and the same when you think about it. It's just people.
That's true, Taylor Navarro.
It is true. Okay. Right, let's see. What other questions have we got? Um,
I love your country. I think 4 chimney sweepers just walked past my window. This is a wild place.
yeah, are they dancing? Yes, no, because we do
Not the
actually
white
have
ones.
I'll have to tell you about Morris dancing another time, because we had this thing called Sweeps Festival. It was huge, and people would dress up as chimney sweeps and start dancing down the historic high street. Um,
I
but
love
it
that.
was you would have loved the vibes.
We used to have a country.
I know, right? Where's it gone? So bringing us a little bit back into TTRPGs.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you don't like do any of like the visual arts, but have any of your like TTRPG characters ever like been like crafters, like painters, like that
Oh,
kind of thing?
certainly. One of the first series I did in the space was an Old Gods of Appalachia, like 8 or 10-parter on for, like, a streamed channel. Before then,
Mm-hmm.
I had been in 2 streams, and neither I didn't get to play a humanoid in either. I was like a puppy in one, and I was a cartoon cactus in the other. Um,
As you
so
do.
yeah, so I got cast, didn't know anybody, but that's where I met, like, Juicy Garland, who's now one of my dear, dear friends, and Jellyfish and Celine. Like, I met a bunch of friends in that game. But
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I didn't know how much better everyone was gonna be than me. They've all done it for years. I was quite intimidated. So I made kind of a safer character where he was a little bit of a spiritual individual, being raised a little more mystical and whatnot. Had also had lost a brother, but he also whittled things, and he would make little like spiritual fetishes and things like that. And the crafting aspect for me is more of what I like to call like a beauty alley oop. Most tools I add to my characters are so I can role play out of the tool rather than they're there for any specific mechanical reason.
Mm.
So him making things with his hands, he would remember like playing with things with his hands with his brother. Like it's all like a memory link for me is how I set up my characters.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're just covered in beauty traps is what I like to call it. It's one of my favorite tactics for getting people to role play a little more emotionally than maybe they've been used to, is you just
Mhm.
put beauty bombs everywhere. Like, "Oh, you're in the town of friendship next to the cliffs of doubt." The most amateur role player can alley-oop off of those. Like, "Oh, as I
Mhm.
walk by the cliffs of doubt, I wonder how long I've walked there inside." Like, it's just an
Yeah,
easy prompt. So I tend to fill my games up with those because I try to get monologues out of players. So my characters are kind of built the same way.
that's lovely. I'm now gonna pull a plot twist because we've spoken a lot about actual play, but you're also a game designer and you can't say no because you've got an itch page and I've seen your games. They're beautiful.
I appreciate that from an actual game designer. Chat, my games are like prompt tables to make people have a sad scene, and definitely designed for more of a podcaster because it's like scene one, scene two, scene three, and you take turns. So it's very easy to edit. My games podcast very well. But usually I get an idea for those within like, I mean, you've seen it. We've chatted where I'm like,
I've
Taylor, I
seen it.
got
It's
an idea
beautiful.
for a game. And like 30 minutes later, there's a post. Oh, I made a new game. Like, what?
Like 25 minutes later, you sent me like the image of the game, and I'm reading it through, and I see the post, and I'm like, "Yep, nope, let's go support that."
Prompt tables are nice because your mechanics can't fail.
Like, that is true. But there are, like, larger TTRPGs that are essentially just really convoluted prompt tables if you think about it. Like,
Mhm,
I'm specifically thinking about, oh gosh, what Good Society. Good
mhm,
Society. Because, like, the only mechanic is I have a certain number of tokens that I can change where the story is going or, like, do a thing. But there's, like, no other mechanics in it other than that, and that thing is, like, 200 plus pages,
mhm, mhm,
you know? So, like, that doesn't mean that what you're creating is not games. Um, but what I wanna ask, pulling out the game designer card, is when you're designing, like, terrain versus when you are GMing and setting up, like, intense and emotional moments in podcasting versus when you're sitting down and designing a game and coming up with that. Like, where are the similarities and where are the differences in that?
Let me tell you a story, Taylor Navarro. When I was younger, like elementary school young, my
Mhm.
mom worked at a thrift store instead of using her teaching degree because if she worked at this thrift store, we got a discount on the private school we went to. It was like a religious school, religious thrift store. So she was in charge of the toy department, and me being like 8, 9, 10 years old was very happy about that. And sometimes we'd have to go in on Saturdays and help, and it was a fun place to hang out, to be fair. It was very not official, you could play everywhere, everyone knew each other, safe place. But I would bag, like, groups of toys, like, they would have all these loose figurines, you'd put, like, 5 in a bag and write, like, $2, well, at the time, $1 on it,
Mm,
and every, like, 30 bags I did, I got to pick a toy. So, we couldn't afford to buy them, but I could earn them.
mm,
Um, I never went with big toys. I liked little Lego guys, I liked little figurines, I liked little plastic, like, ninjas and stuff like that, because I would go out into my beautiful yard, it was a little grassy patch off the side of our house, and I would set up these different towns, and I would rope it off, and nobody could walk through for, like, 2 weeks, because I would be playing out these massive stories. And I always found as a kid, I liked the story more if there was more characters in it. So even if our podcast, you'll notice there's a lot of characters that come in and out. And even with my games, a lot of the prompts I see is the same way. They are
mm,
just pieces I can move around as a storyteller. Like the more pieces you give me about how you feel, the more
mhm.
colors I have to paint the road forward with. So, it's
Yeah,
easier to tell a story with 10 Lego guys than versus 2 Lego guys. Like, it's just more so my games being prompts are more just for that. Here's a specific scene we wanna make, like you're waiting for someone to come home for the holidays and they're not gonna come this year. So all the prompts and when I GM, people are like, "Well, how do you feel when you say that? How do you feel when you see that? When was the last time you said that and it mattered?" Like, that is me just pulling out all the little Lego guys of your heart so I can set up a proper story. So my games and trains are kind of the same way. Like the river isn't there for mechanical disadvantage. It's there because when was the last time your character encountered a river that mattered? It's there for a story prompt, not a mechanical prompt.
Hmm.
So I think I'm just a little different with that because I avoid the heavy mechanics and I'm not the best at them. Like I can run them pretty okay, but it's not my strong stat. So I leave that to people who are amazing at it. And I kind of stick to what I feel like I'm pretty good at. Um,
Yeah.
if that answers
Everyone has
the
different
question.
strengths. It does because you're talking about like the similarities
Mhm.
between all of those things. Also, I'm gonna drop some deep Taylor lore here.
Do it.
Um, when I was about a similar age, when I was like 8, 9, 10, um, I played with my best friend, and in like every Friday, you were allowed to bring in toys, and instead of like bringing in proper toys like everyone else did, I had a old peanut butter jar that had been cleaned out, and inside I had a bunch of pom poms that I had glued googly eyes to.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, and my best friend, she had a bunch of like crushed up tin foil that she had like stuck the pen into and like given it a smiley face. Uh, they were called pom poms and mifflets, and we used to just sit there and play pretend. And like sometimes we'd like steal things from like doll houses and stuff to give them like little beds and stuff like that, and they would go on grand adventures and like have castles and all sorts of things. But that whole idea of like using what you have to tell the story that you want with the imagination that you need and needing like that wider cast, because I could play that game on my own, but it wasn't anywhere near as fun unless my friend had her specific like tinfoil people to match my pom poms people's energy. So I get it, is what I'm trying to say.
I hated when people tried to play with me. Well, that game. I loved
Mm.
playing other
Well,
things with
that's your special
people.
game just for you. That's
Well,
why
and
solo journaling games exist. It's like because
I
you don't like when other people harsh your vibe in a TTRPG.
there's video of me at, like, 9 years old being like, "But they don't play right." Um, because this
You
was the
sound
other
like my
weird
8-year-old.
I mean, good luck. The weird part was too, I'd have these, like, 7-day long epics, and then when it would get to the final battle, you know, that moment in Lord of the Rings where there's the army, the army, the army, I would clean it all up. I didn't care how it ended. I knew I would let the good side win. I was 9, like, the good side's gonna win, that's just how it goes. And I'd get to that point and I'd clean it up, and even now with TTRPGs, I really don't like clear endings. I like it when it's just a fade out back into normalcy, because I feel like that's what life is like. After huge things like getting married, like the loss of a loved one, like a huge
Mhm.
victory, the next day feels weird with how normal it is. And I love my stories ending in almost a quiet way because I feel like it resembles life more.
Understood. Question.
Mhm,
If if you're playing a TTRPG to escape, it's what is it? Is it like your escapist reality? Whatever that phrase is. My brain is concentrating on not losing the question instead of finding the correct vocab,
mhm.
right? If TTRPGs are your escapist fantasy, which I'm not saying they are for you, they definitely are for me, and you end it by going back into normalcy, does that not defeat the purpose?
I mean, to an extent, like if your characters have to eat food, have you broken your normalcy? For me, they're not really an escape though, just very fair.
Mm,
It is me telling the stories I've always told, but in a different format. The first poem I ever wrote was a 3-page limerick about a toothbrush that came to life and cleaned a guy's room, and then the toothbrush got the allowance instead of the guy, and the toothbrush got to go to the movie with his friends while he had to stay home. And that was the very first poem I ever wrote. And looking back, I'm like, there's the up, there's the drop, there's the like progression of story. Like I had it down when I was in 4th grade. It could be a one shot right now, like toothbrush versus guy. Like I could make a pretty easy one pager about it. Um,
RahRah, I have a request for you. I have one request.
I don't know if anyone ever read it. That was the theme of elementary school, was, like, teachers would be, "Turn in a two-page story," and I'd turn in a 30-page story, and then notice that their red ink stopped after page 3. And then my
I've
parents
only got
never
so
read.
much time to mark, you know?
I get that. My parents never really read anything I ever wrote either. My first
Oh,
poetry book, when
no.
it came out, my dad had already passed, and he was a simple guy, so my writing was always a little weird for them and always a little,
Mm,
they didn't understand it.
mhm,
So I think that was the first time my mother had ever read anything I wrote, and I was in my 20s. So I always accepted that people wouldn't love it, and I think that's kind of made me a little easier when we lose Webfests. Um,
mm,
and I don't have all my creative points in that where it makes me feel not adequate. I'll just usually declare the judges are wrong. 'Cause that's how confident I feel. I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm making beautiful shit. Like, I don't know why you got so simple."
mhm.
And that's not always right either, but it's better than pulling into, like, an emotional rut. And I
Yeah,
just feel years of rejection made me very confident in what I make because it never failed me. It maybe failed them, but, like, I never failed it, and it never failed me. When I wanted adventure, I hitchhiked across the country. When I thought something was wrong as a kid, I got beat up by cops at protests. Like, there is an element of autism to that, where you see a clear wrong and you can just step towards it without believing in the dangers or seeing the dangers. But I've never felt like writing or storytelling has let me down. And so, in this weird surrealistic way, I don't want to let it down either. And that means keeping stories a little brave and keeping them a little important and trying to not. Sometimes people think I don't like fun games. I have a great time playing fun games. I ran fun games at home for years. Like, those were not hard as a dungeon games. Those were huge
mm,
fantasy campaigns of, like, world changing stuff. Um, I love fun games, but each episode of Hard as a Dungeon takes 25 to about 40 hours to edit. So I'm very intentional with how where I want to put that time. And so it could be a real silly little one shot. I will try to make you think about your heart
mm.
because I don't know what else to do. To be fair, I don't know if that answered your question either, but it's all important, Taylor. It's all important.
See, I forgot what the question was. I got so, like, enwrapped by the answer that I was just like, "Yes, yes."
Distracted
This
tool of
this
mine.
is me and a team of, like, 5, Navy SEALs, dropped into the US to grab you just for this conversation. You're gonna need to find your own ride home, I'm so sorry. I only had them on loan for, like, that one day.
I don't even know how
Um
I got here because of the whole hood thing. They're like, "He's brown."
Oh my god.
Sorry, American joke.
Oh my goodness. No, it's great. Uh, I just I love art. I love art and intention and just this is I love this show. Thank you for coming on. This makes me
Thank
very happy.
Oh, I'm so excited I got invited. I was so sad when it was just
Mhm.
UK people.
We've had some. Have I had anyone in Europe yet? Yes,
Mm,
my last guest was in Europe. So we're trying to broaden out. The issue is I unfortunately I only speak English.
mm.
So with language barriers and wider European, but hopefully we will get that. I am practicing my Spanish. It's taking me a very long time though. Okay. So now I know your answer to this, but I technically have to ask the question anyway, even though we've said it in a couple of different ways. So, knowing what you do in the TTRPG sphere, I'm not going to call it industry because you are a hobbyist. Um, would you call it art?
Yeah,
Yeah,
dead ass.
yeah.
Without any shame or timidness or anything whatsoever. I'd call it beautiful. I'd call it insightful and unique.
Mhm.
I wouldn't call it the best, but for what it is, it's gorgeous and important, is my opinion.
I don't think art always has to be the best, and I'm going to show you two examples. Um, so, I am half American, I'm half Puerto Rican, and even though I don't support the origins of the event. I celebrate Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
Um, my 3 year old went to nursery and told them that we were doing Thanksgiving at the weekend. And they came back and they made this. And this is supposed to be a turkey. This is art.
Oh, that's a beautiful turkey. I knew what it
It's
was instantly.
it's a beautiful turkey. No other kid in the class made it. Just him because they help kids celebrate their own celebrations outside of the traditional ones that the UK does. Another one. I am just gonna cover because there's a picture in the middle. But this is a flower that my eldest made for Mother's Day.
Mhm.
Again, it doesn't need to be the best. The point was intention, uh, care, and craft.
Across the
Like
board.
and so to me, like objectively I know they're not the best. I keep them on my desk anyway, along with like art. I don't have the picture up at the moment. I have art from a deceased friend. I've got my dice boxes. Like, look at this. This is art.
That's a
This
beautiful
is
box.
it's a beautiful box, right? Like, but art doesn't need to be the best. Like, and it's why I think it's why the indie scene is like thriving in such a way at the moment. Like the indie scene is doing really well for TTRPGs right now. And I think it's because a lot of people go in with this intention of just whether they know they're making art or not, they've got like those pillars of art and they create it. Um, and so we all get to consume it and love it. And there's so much of it because the barrier to entry is so low.
And there's a lot of power in the premise there. I
Yeah.
found with Hard as a Dungeon, the whole, when we first showed up, we were branding ourselves like as the sad game channel. Then Blackwater started, and me being strategic and smart was like, nope, we got to change that. So we became For Heroes and Poets. That's when I changed the whole slogan because they were sadder
Mm,
than we were. Um, so I think there's also a little bit of killing the cringe that comes with more emotional or purposefully beautiful games.
mm,
Because it was weird to show up in our space with season one when I knew maybe 10 people in the scene and put out this very emotional short series of like a dead grandmother and what it means to be in the shadow of someone greater that you loved. And like the way I GM is vulnerable. Like I talk about loss and hearts and love, and it could be seen as very cringe to some people unless you've killed it. And then I hope it comes off as sincere and vulnerable. But it is scary to be that vulnerable in a space where you don't know who's taking it in. It feels very
yeah.
exposed sometimes.
It does. Like there are times like when I'm either engaging with other people's art or I'm creating my own and I'm like, I'm reading myself for filth right now. And I don't know how closely you're paying attention. Like, for example, with the whole Asylus arc in God Killer Balance, I relate to Asylus and exactly her story so heavily, and you can map different characters onto different people in my life, and suddenly everything makes sense in that context. And when I was like engaging with that and speaking about it publicly, I was like, oh gosh, if anyone realizes, if anyone understands, I've suddenly made myself very vulnerable and exposed,
Mhm.
you know? Um, and that's like a and it is cringy. So it is like the opposite end of the spectrum of that though, of like loving something so intensely that all you can do is scream about, look how amazing this is,
Mhm.
you know. Um, but also if we think about TTRPGs as art, which they are, objectively they are, this is what this show has decided. That is my official stance as the host. Fight me. Um
UK election is to declare TTRPGs art.
Exactly. But knowing that TTRPGs are art, one of the most important things about art is the way in which it is received. Um, and art does not flourish and thrive unless it is given attention and acknowledgement, as well as like the kind of like personal interpretation. And like this, or the small group of like, oh, we're all playing this TTRPG, we're engaging in this artistic endeavor together, we're having a good time. The recognition beyond that is incredibly important as well. I feel like, am I just going off on a really random one? Or, or like,
Not at all. Like, we get pretty good listens on the podcast, like, more than I
mm,
ever expected.
mm,
It doesn't matter nearly to me as much as when a friend has listened and tells me. Uh
mm,
Which I didn't know would be the thing. Like, we're getting, like, 1,000 listens a month, and I did not expect like, I don't know
that's
who these
huge.
people are.
Congratulations.
It's sometimes 3 episodes that we put out that month. I have no idea who all these people are, and that's kinda scary. But when I talk to my dearest friends and they're like, "Oh, no, I'm, like, 6 episodes behind," that's when my heart feels the, like, "But I need you to know me." I
Mm,
don't need the strangers to know me. But that's one of the things about the types of stories I tell is you will be known. I have very much bared a lot of my trauma in like a public sphere in the way I tell stories. My For those who don't know me, my dad and brother both passed fairly close to each other, like under 2 years of each other, and they were both very traumatic and last minute and no warning type of situations. So I always play like dead sibling, dead parents, because I'm not good enough of an actor to know what it feels like to have that not be a lack. So it's entering in with just an already vulnerability. I'll play for Sam size, and I'll be like, "Hey, I want to have my brother this have happened." He's like, "Are you sure you want that to happen?" I was like, "Oh yeah, this is where I rock. I know what that feels like, and I want
mm,
to portray it. I don't want to pretend as much as I want to express." Sometimes.
yes. It's nice. I'm recording something for Euphoria right now, and I am
This
playing
moment.
completely, yeah, right
Mhm,
now,
good,
right now,
mhm.
it's on the other screen over there. No, but at the moment, I'm recording a series for Euphoria, and we rolled our characters, and I'm playing something so far out of my normal type. And it's just like I do feel like I'm actually pretending here. But when I came like onto the hardest dungeon and I played Maud, that was so completely different because I rocked up and I was like, she's married, she's got a dog, she's got two kids because that's what I have. And I just played myself and I did put my heart out there. And I was like, anyone who's listened to that episode knows me so deeply. And I don't know if they know that.
Well, they do now.
They do now, only if they listen to Spinning the Yarn as well. Um,
um, for me, it's hard because I can't play, like, youth very easily. Like,
mm,
kids on bikes is a very hard system for me because I don't remember what it's like to feel that innocent. I don't know how to pretend it without it being just me projecting, like, "Oh, I remember reading The Boxcar Children." It's probably like that. Because I know I was an autistic little weirdo, but I was also such a happy kid. Every year at the Christian school, I'd win the most joyful award for my class because I was just so happy all the time. And then life changed that. Like the first very close death was 13, and then like family came later. And it's been a theme
mm,
of trying to maintain that joy while knowing your light's been at least dimmed. And what does it mean when your joy is mature with loss versus what does it mean when your joy is innocent? And those are things I love playing with characters.
no, I completely get that. So when we did the Tales from the Loop series on Cat the Law Mistress's channel, I very specifically asked to be aging out because I
Mhm.
didn't quite remember being like 12, 13, 14. I remember being 15 when everything was changing. And I remember when uh I watched two versions of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's all coming back. I'm
The
not sure why this
BBC
is.
puppet one?
It was. I don't know. It was like done in like the 90s
Oh, yeah,
or something like that. The
I've seen
live
that one
action
too.
one, like it's the four movies because it goes all the way up to like the silver chair.
They didn't get to the final battle because no
But
one
they
ever does.
exactly. So I watched that one, and then I watched the remakes with Disney and the Hot Prince Caspian.
Mhm, mhm.
And for the remake, they really focused on Susan and her aging out. And I put that down specifically to Darcy as this is my point of reference for what I want the winter to be. Like this whole thing of like, okay, we've done the adventure. she's about to age out of the system and everyone else is going to stay.
Mhm.
Like, what is that like? Because that whole pinpoint of my life where everything changed. I had my first loss at 16. You know, that I transferred schools. Like there was like all of this stuff that I was like, this I can do. This is me. Yes, I'm pretending, but really I'm just playing my memories in a different way.
Mhm.
Um and it's beautiful. And I do think that as long as like there's consent at the table, that is a really like fulfilling way to experience like role playing games. Like it's literally psychologically proven that children learn through imaginary play.
Mhm.
Like that's how they do it. So like you'll see like parents like potty training and they'll make Teddy go to the potty, you know? So that way kids learn that way. And when you're an adult, there is so much more to learn still. Um, and like you said earlier, sometimes it's about yourself, you know? And so it can be a really like kind of cathartic and fun experience
Mhm.
playing that way.
I've been finding most of the characters I've been picking lately are like 60, 65 years old. I am not that old. I know.
I
But
thought you were timeless.
I, I almost said I wish, but I don't know if that's my opinion anymore. Um, a lot of
So no
people,
RahRah vampire ending?
oh God, vampires. They suck. But uh, I love playing that age of like, because I feel closer to that age. But I
Mm,
also feel like I can enter into a joyful, lighthearted whimsicalness easier than most people my age. And it's weird having like a foot in the beautiful realm of death and a foot in the other side of it and feeling at home in both.
mm,
So I tend to play a lot of 65-year-olds because it's more that end of life, like you've already lost family. You've given up on dreams. You've realized you disappointed yourself along the way. And sometimes that's the main villain in my stories is you weren't as good as you thought you would be. You weren't as good at loving as you thought you would be when you grew up. You were just too clumsy of heart or too traumatized. I love those stories because they feel real
yeah.
to me. And also with playing like with loss in mind, like characters who have lost brothers, lost dads, it's also a weird little hidden tribute. Like I know a lot of people who lose someone and they never talk about them again. It's just they've wiped it under a rug. I bring up my dad and brother every day. There's a Walt Whitman quote after someone had passed that it is my job to not forget you. And I see that as a challenge, but also an honor to carry a torch for someone whose name you won't say. But your heart is still building a whole character around that loss because it was so big, it can translate into other worlds. So it's also just a hidden game of mine. If I want to bring my brother into this game, because we never played a game like this together, and he probably would have loved it.
That's really beautiful. I don't
Sorry,
want to say anything
10
else
a.m.
after that because like that is beautiful. We do have time for one more question though.
Taylor, what's your favorite ice cream?
What's my favorite ice cream? Um, See, I'm really basic. Hear me out. I really
Wait,
like
eyeball sweater.
uh I really like vanilla ice cream, but it has to have so you know like chocolate spread.
Do I ever?
So you take chocolate spread, you put it in the mug, you put it in the microwave for 30 seconds, and then you pour it on top, and then you let it harden again.
Mhm.
And that's my favorite flavor of ice cream.
Well, that's it for us here at Spinning the Yarn.
You know what? This is a beautiful time. This is a beautiful time to end it, but you haven't told me what your favorite ice cream is. I'm supposed to be interviewing here.
Are we basing it on flavor or how my heart feels about it?
How your heart feels about it, obviously.
This will be a strange one. Pumpkin pie ice cream would be the heart
Ooh.
one, but I only have it every like 3 or 4 years. because it reminds me of a tiny little ice cream counter in the town I grew up in, and I would
Mhm.
wait all year for November because they would have pumpkin pie ice cream. Looking back, cookies and cream has probably been more of a consistent favorite my whole
Mine
life.
is caramel if we're being consistent about it,
Mhm.
but, like,
But that's the important one. That's the
yeah.
one that has a story attached to it.
This has been so wonderful. Rara, thank you so much, for
Taylor
joining me
Navarro,
here.
thank you.
Little bit of a plug, where can people find you?
You can find me right here if you're watching this. And I am the creator and sound designer of this little fledgling podcast called The Hardest Dungeon. I'll also be at Gen Con on a panel with Taylor Navarro. So you can find me at those places and on the internet under some sort of rah-rah.
Okay, fantastic. I have been Taylor Navarro. I might not be Taylor Navarro tomorrow. We'll have to see when we get to tomorrow. Thank you so much, Euphoria, for keeping on with this show. We're like halfway through season 2, everyone. I
Great
didn't
show.
think that we would get here, but we did. Make sure that you're following Euphoria on all of the socials found down below, so that way you can find out who my next guest is going to be. Even I don't know.
I
That's a
know, but I
joke. I
won't
do.
tell you.
Yeah, don't tell me. I want it to be a surprise when I get into the green room. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Brambleheart Games, the creators of Fate Earth, for sponsoring season 2 of Spinning the Yarn. Absolutely fantastic. Make sure that you're checking out that crowdfunder. You can find it at the command in chat now. And that's it. That's us. So now all we have to do is wave goodbye, and then I guess find Rara a plane ticket. So thank you, everyone.
I
Goodbye.
think this is a 2-week visa. I'll be here.